We are hoping to bring you this video within seconds. Breaking news from inside the Capitol building. Anti-Israel protesters just shut down the largest cafeteria on the Senate side, and they were chanting, according to our producers there, and they were saying that the Capitol Police are chanting everybody out or be placed under arrest, and the protesters were shouting back, this is the house of the people. The Senate can't eat until Gaza eats. Fox News has now learned that many of those activists are the same ones who interrupted Secretary Lloyd Austin's testimony earlier today during a Senate Armed Services hearing that was looking into the military budget. Now, we have seen so many of these protesters now show up, even outside the Wilmington, Delaware home of the President of the United States. They follow Biden around everywhere he goes now, every state. And they may not have been protesters, but the vote against him that was uncommitted in places where we've seen so much anti-Israel movement, like Michigan. In those places, those voters were above 100,000 voting uncommitted, not for Biden. So this is a political side. We have the video. Roll. So here it is. So protesters gathered, shutting down the largest cafeteria on the Senate side of Capitol Hill, making their voices heard, going back and forth with cops.
They probably have a big student
America
debt loan.
Reports will be all over it. Stay tuned.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.
LGBTQ plus Catholics are criticizing a new declaration from the Vatican that says gender-affirming surgery and surrogacy are grave violations of human dignity. Advocates immediately called the 20-page document a setback from a pope who's attempted to strengthen ties with the community. ABC News foreign correspondent James Longman has the details. James?
Yeah, hi, Diane. Pope Francis has been accused by some of being too liberal and by others of not being liberal enough. This latest affirmation of Catholic doctrine is reigniting that debate. This document is called Human Dignity, and it outlines the opposition the Church has to sex change operations and to gender theory more broadly. In it, it says that anybody who chooses to change the sex that they're assigned with at birth risks essentially playing God. It also outlines its opposition to abortion and to surrogacy, saying that it both violates the woman and the child. Last year, though, Pope Francis did say that transgender people would be welcomed to be baptized in the church. It also said that it would welcome same-sex couples to have...
Republicans are suing over and over again in multiple states. Republicans are suing to make sure that Americans have to pay more in student loans, to make sure that you have to pay more interest to banks on your student loans. That is what they are offering America in this election year. Isn't that what America most needs? For banks to make more money off people who took out loans to go to college? Isn't that really, morally, isn't that a real justice issue for America? Everything is so personality driven, and the way we talk about politics, it sometimes just doesn't get covered. But what the Republicans are offering in terms of policy right now, what they're actually doing in places where they have power, it's all stuff.
Okay, let's talk courts. New York Appeals Court rejecting former President Trump's motion to delay his hush money trial. His jury selection is going to begin on Monday. Former acting Attorney General Matt Whitaker joins us now. Matt, really not a surprise. They asked for a delay to get a new judge. They asked for a delay to get a new location. No and no.
Yeah, it's not surprising that New York doesn't want to give up its grasp, especially Manhattan. But, if you look at the numbers, the president's filing included a poll of 2,000 people in New York County, which is Manhattan. And what it found was 61% of those people polled think that Donald Trump is guilty of these crimes. Secondly, in 2020, New York City voted by 76% to 23% for Joe Biden. So obviously getting a fair jury panel is impossible. Now, all this court said is, well, let's try to pick a jury and see if we can get 12 people that can be fair and impartial. But I worry that many, because of the high-profile nature of this case, are going to want to be on this jury and aren't going to be honest with the court during jury selection. It's very concerning.
It's a city of activists. I don't know if people notice. That's who's stopping our roads every day. They accuse President Trump of lying about 34 business records, 12 ledger extensions, 11 invoices, and 11 checks. But the source is Michael Cohen. He's got some truth problems. Meanwhile, let's talk about what's happening on another court case. The DOJ is refusing to hand over Joe Biden's audio recordings of his conversations with Robert Hur. Remember, Robert Hur said that Joe Biden was a little bit too old and too sympathetic to be prosecuted. So far, Merrick Garland faces contempt charges if he doesn't hand over these tapes. They're both staring each other down. Garland says it's going to be used for political purposes. I don't want to take part. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, this is a legitimate oversight function of the Congress. Remember, a judge just said, are you kidding me, when DOJ wouldn't turn over certain records and testimony from a couple prosecutors in the Hunter Biden case as well. So, the DOJ, I guess, will put Peter Navarro in prison, will convict Steve Bannon and try to put him in prison for the same thing. But when it comes to them turning over documents or cooperating with Congress, they say that they're above the law. It's kind of gross.
How does it play out? Like, what's the next step be? I mean, you go ahead.
Right, it's a standoff, but ultimately, they have to refer these contempt charges to DOJ, and guess what? DOJ isn't going to follow up on them by any chance.
Right. I tell you, it is worth reading the transcript. The president goes all over the place. Ask him one question, he's talking about his childhood. It does tell the story, so maybe they should just pull some excerpts out. But evidently, the tapes are really telling. Matt, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.
We are in the path of totality. So the eclipse is moving along at about 1,600 miles an hour behind us. And once we get to about 1856 Zulu, for those of you that are tracking that time, that'll be... So that's going to be 1:56 our time. That's when the actual totality starts. So our plan is for me to give you guys about a 5-minute warning. We'll maneuver the airplane in one direction, so one side of the airplane sees the eclipse. We'll do a 180, and then the other side will see it. How does that sound?
I'm going to try to do it myself in a couple of years. I think the next one where you can see it easily, not from the United States, but at least nearby, is in August of 2026. So maybe Delta will fly me to Greenland. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. It's a very special thing you got to do, and I hope to join you someday in seeing a total eclipse of the sun from an airplane.
Joyce Vance, just when we think we've heard all the arguments already on this issue, JackSmith comes through with another brief with new ways of saying these things that become ever more powerful every time he's forced to restate them.
I think that that's right. This is a technical legal brief, and Smith is making arguments predicated on what he hopes the Supreme Court will do, ruling that there's no immunity, and what he's afraid the court might do, ruling that there's limited immunity, in which case Smith says to the court, no matter what you decide about what immunity might exist, Donald Trump isn't entitled to any immunity. You should send this case back to the district court for trial, because his conduct involves a purely personal conspiracy. And although we're entitled to use evidence of his official acts, we could try this case just as a private, unofficial acts conspiracy. So it's extremely well crafted from a technical legal point of view. The language, though, is beautiful, Lawrence, and I'm struck, despite trying to read it with my professional hat on, how emotionally this brief hits. This is Jack Smith saying to the Supreme Court, please don't sacrifice the American experiment on the altar of Donald Trump. It is in many ways an emotional brief about what it means to be an American and to have no man be above the law in this country.
And it is supported by other briefs filed, including by historians. This is what the historians brief filed today says. The founders' disinterest in taking up executive immunity is not surprising. The constitutional debate was framed by the Federalists, who sought to include an executive that was strong, but whose powers were not boundless, and those who were concerned that any executive would be too inherently dangerous. The Federalists retained their concern that a president must be subject to constraints on his ambition. They certainly were not advocating for increasing a president's privileges or immunities. The framers did not ignore the subject. They rejected it. On this point, there are no credible, competing, original understandings. And Joyce, as we know, the Republicans on the Supreme Court claim that they believe that original intent is what matters.
They do, in fact, make that claim, and this brief is powerful on that point. This is leading historians who look at and study what the Founding Fathers meant. And that's what the conservative majority on this court says matters to them. They've used that in other cases, including Dobbs, the abortion decision. The conclusion in this amicus brief is pretty startling. It's really across the board saying absolutely no immunity. This was not what the Founding Fathers meant the Constitution to mean.
Hey everyone, MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right.